Masechet Sukkah, Daf Tet, 9. When Rabbi Shapira first instituted the Daf Yomi, he must have been a very avid messianic optimist because even though we are not allowed to learn Gemara on Tisha B'Av, he did not schedule a day off. So he must have thought Mashiach would come beforehand. But nevertheless, the daf goes on. So we're going to try to go ahead a little bit today to get a head start in order to make up for time that we will lose on Tisha B'Av. So we begin with the Mishnah on top of the page. Sukkah Yeshana, Bet Shammai Poselin Ubet Hillel Machshirin. An old Sukkah. Bet Shammai says no good. Bet Hillel says it's fine. Ve'ezu hi Sukkah Yeshana Kol she'asa'ah Kodem lehag sheloshim yom. אבל אם עשה לשם חג, אפילו מתחילת השנה כשרה. An old sukkah means that it was made 30 days before. So it's not really a function of how old it is, but that in fact doesn't matter. The point is that you have to make it for the purpose of a mitzvah, that you're going to sit in it to fulfill the mitzvah of sukkah. Bet Shammai says you need to do that. If it's within 30 days, then you assume already within 30 days, everybody's learning the halachot of sukkah. Truth is nowadays, probably always, but 30 days before you're thinking of Rosh Hashanah, Elul, Yom Kippur, and we only get like 3 days to talk about.
It's the same thing though. Meaning if you're doing it before, it says if it's earlier than 30 days, but 30 days is already Hilat Hashanah. It's only 2 weeks old.
No, but there's still 30 days before, in the middle of the month
Elul.
Elul.
Oh, okay.
The point is every holiday, like Pesach, 30 days before you start. Yeah, I'm just joking that because we have all the high holidays, we're focused on that rather than Sukkah. So, Sukkot gets short shrift compared to Pesach. But in any case, within 30 days, you are already thinking about Sukkot. And so therefore, we assume that when you build it then you have in mind that you're going to use it for a Sukkah. Before that, you don't have it in mind. However, technically, even if you made it way before, from the beginning of the year, months before, and you said, I'm making this for Sukkot. I have time now, but I'm going to build it for Sukkot, that's fine. The point has to be for the sake of the mitzvah, for the sake of the holiday. All of that is Bet Shammai. Bet Hillel says, no, it's fine, as long as it fulfills the requirements, like we saw yesterday. If you happen to be a hut there that gives shade for animals, that's fine. You don't have to make it specifically for the holiday. Now, we follow Bet Hillel. However, we do add a little chumrah that you should do something, just push up a little of the schach. You don't have to do all of it, you don't have to rebuild it, but just move around a little bit of schach in some spot, and that way you're just doing something to renew it and show, which is based more on the Yerushalmi, but we do not follow Bet Shammai, so really you can use a pre-existing structure. That's the Mishnah. Now, what is the source for Bet Shammai? Amar Qira, Hag Sukkot, Shivat Yamim Ladonai, Sukkah Asuya, the Shem Hag Ba'ainan. Since it's in Parashat Emor, it says make a Sukkah for 7 days for God. So you see that the Sukkah has to be made for God, for the holiday, right? You have to have that in mind. That has to be the purpose. All right, that seems to be a good source. How about Bet Hillel? Bet Hillel. Oh, I know he knows that pasuk too, but he uses it for something else. Rav Sheshat is obviously much later than Rabbi Akiva. So he's not learning it directly. He's later Amora, but he has a tradition, a baraita from Rabbi Akiva's time. Minayin la'aseh sukkah she'asurin kol shivah t'modomar chag sukkot shivat yamim ladonai. How do you know that you're not allowed to use the wood of the sukkah all 7 days? Because you make your Chag Sukkot 7 days la Hashem. It's almost like it's a hekdesh, right? Once you put it in, you make a sukkah out of it, you're not allowed to use it. And we have a further braita that backs it up. Betanya Rabbi Yehuda ben Betera Omer, Keshem shachal shem shamayim ala hagiga, kach chal shem shamayim ala sukkah. Shneimar Chag Sukkot shivat yamim ladonai, ma chag ladonai, af sukkah ladonai. As Braita says, just like regarding a korban chagiga, which we bring on all the holidays, you bring an animal, and once you designate it, that's it. It is a holy animal. You can't use it for anything else. You can't work with it. You can't eat it after you sacrifice it. So too, the same words, Chag Sukkot is also la Hashem. And so there you go. That's the parallel. So Bet Hillel uses this pasuk. This is actually a very interesting halacha. It's actually saying that the sukkah is a holy object. It is kind of like a korban. This fits together with some of the imagery that we've been seeing before, comparing the sukkah to the aron, to the other kelim. There's a lot of Bet Hamikdash symbolism regarding the sukkah. This is also interesting because usually, if you look at a lot of halachic literature, they say, why can't you use the pieces of the sukkah? Because it's mukseh, right? Because you didn't have in mind you're going to use it. And so it's mukseh on Yom Tov, even Chol HaMoed, some kind of concept of mukseh, right? But you see, that would be the Rabbanan. But you see, from these sources, these don't say so. These, from here, it sounds like it's deoraita, and not because of mukseh, but rather because it's hikdesh. Okay. So that's what Bet Hillel uses that pasuk for. So therefore, he's not going to learn from this pasuk that has to be built for the holiday. So Bet Shammai, Bet Shammai, doesn't he need the pasuk to teach the same thing, that you cannot use the wood of the sukkah that's like hikdesh? Says you're right. Bet Shammai does use it. So we're going to change our minds regarding Bet Shammai. We need another source for them. This now we're going to go to Sefer Devarim, where it says you have to make the holiday of Sukkot. So from this word, from making it, means you have to make it for the holiday, as if it says ta'aseh, right, for the Chag. Sukkah suya l'shem Chag ba'ayanan. That's his source. Now Bet Hillel, what are you going to do with that pasuk from Devarim? I learned from there that you are allowed to make a sukkah on Chol HaMoed, right? Let's say you didn't get a chance to build a sukkah before, or you're traveling in the middle, right? Are you allowed to build a sukkah in the middle? Bet Shammai says no, you cannot build a sukkah in the middle. You have to have a sukkah that is possible that you can stay in it all 7 days. Not that you can't go to your friend's house one time, but whatever sukkah you're staying in has to be up for all 7 days. Bet Hillel says you can build it in the middle, and he learns that from this pasuk. Right? Even within the 7 days, you can make it any time. So good. Now Bet Hillel, Bet Shammai disagrees, says you can't. Therefore, he does not need the pasuk in Devarim to teach you that you can build a sukkah, because he doesn't think you can build a sukkah in the middle of the holiday, and therefore he can use this to say that when you build a sukkah, it has to be for the sake of the holiday. Truth is, these two things go together. It has to be for the sake of the holiday. It makes sense. You need it beforehand for the whole holiday. Whereas Bet Hillel says you go to any hut, whatever is anything around, and that is fine. Bet Hillel, let lehud Rav Yehuda amar Rav, Rav Yehuda amar Rav, asaa min hakosim, min hanimin, min hageradim, pesula, min hasisin keshera. Hold on. Now we're going to compare sukkah to sisit. Sisit has to be made for sisit. So here, Rav Yehuda says, if you made sisit out of kotsin, limin, geradim, these are all like leftover threads, things that are fringes that are left at the end or stuck in the loom. You can't make sisit out of these things. It's not respectable to take these leftovers and use it. However, from sisin, it's okay. That's a ball of thread, even though it was not spun l'shem sisit, it's permitted according to this opinion. Now, when I said this to Shmuel, so that was Rav. Then now Shmuel said, you know what? The regular ball of thread is also not good. Why? Even the spinning has to be for the sake of a mitzvah. So you got to get special thread, which is what we do today. So the point is that that just like for a sisit, you have to make the thread l'shem mitzvah. So too, would Bet Hillel not agree that you have to make doesn't he agree with this halacha? If so, he should agree that sukkah also has to be l'shem mitzvah. Okay, it's a beautiful concept that you do something not just randomly, but even as you're making it, that's preparing for it. That itself is part of the process. Now, sisit is different from sukkah. In sisit, we have a special pasuk that says, make fringes matase lach. Lach l'shem chovacha. Lach means for you, for your obligation. So there we have a special pasuk that goes out of its way to say that you have to make sisit lishma l'shem mitzvah. Hachanameh chagos chotase lecha lecha l'shem chova. Wait, Sukkah also says make a sukkah for you. That's the pasuk in Devarim. Means for you, for the obligation. Isn't that the same? No. We need the pasuk in Devarim to exclude. The word lecha excludes a stolen sukkah. Right? You go somewhere and you go and steal someone's sukkah. There's a movie like that. Someone stole a sukkah. I forgot the name. I'll send it later. So if you steal someone's sukkah, no good, right? You don't even fulfill the mitzvah, like a lulav and other mitzvot. That's why we need this word lecha, but therefore we don't need this pasuk to teach us that it has to be made l'shem sukkah. Hold on. Okay, let's go back to sisit. For sisit also, we need that gedim ta'aseh lach. That will also teach that you can't steal someone's sisit. This actually is a halacha. People leave their koracha and talit in the bet knesset sometimes, and if you forgot yours, the halacha there is you are allowed to borrow someone's, because we assume if you leave it in the cubby, you wouldn't mind if someone borrowed it for a mitzvah. Not that they take it home, but they use it and put it away nicely. So that's okay. But if you break into someone's house and steal their talit and wear it, you're not fulfilling any mitzvah. Okay, so hatam kitib kera harina ve'asu lahem mishalem. Now, regarding sisit, we have another pasuk altogether that says they should make for them, meaning for themselves. You have to make your own sisit. So, if regarding sisit, we have two pasukim. One to teach that can't be stolen, has to be yours, and the other pasuk that says you have to tie it, spin it lishma. But regarding sukkah, we only have one pasuk. So we learned that the sukkah has to be yours and not stolen, but there is no other pasuk that would tell us that it has to be done lishma, and therefore Bet Hillel says you do not have to make a sukkah lishma. It can be made just as long as made for shade. Okay, that's the end of that Mishnah. Next Mishnah on Daf Bet. Ha'oseh sukkato tachat ha'ilan ki'ilu asa'ah betoch habayit. If you make your sukkah under a tree, this happens a lot. It's no good. It's like making a sukkah inside your house. And obviously inside your house is also not good. It's interesting because we saw yesterday that the Samaritans do make it in their house. They say it's because of persecution. We're not sure when it started really. Around 1500 years ago. I wonder if there were already at this time of the Mishnah some people that were making a sukkah indoors, and if so, this halacha would be a polemic specifically against them. Anyway, so under a house or under a tree. Also not good. Sukkah gabe sukkah halyona keshera v'atachtona pesula. If you have a double-decker sukkah, the top one is fine because it just that's a regular sukkah. It's just sitting on. It doesn't matter what it's sitting on. But the one beneath is no good. You have to be sitting in a sukkah, not a sukkah that's underneath any other structure. Not even if a top structure is a kosher sukkah. So it's interesting. We're going to analyze it because technically it's schach and more schach. So what's the difference? I mean, if you make schach very thick, you can make it as thick as you want. So what's the problem here? All right, so we'll have to conceptualize this. Anyway, that's Tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda Omerim and Dayorin be'alyona tachtona keshera. If there's no one living in the upper story, then the lower one is fine, right? So he's agreeing with what I just said. No one living in the upper one, so it's just a big schach, a big roof, right? So what's the problem with that? It doesn't get its own name as a dwelling if there's nobody living in it. The machloket here between Tanakh and Rabbi Yehuda may be related to the very first Mishnah in the beginning of the Masechet, about one that's very tall, 20 amot. So according to the Rabbi Yehuda, if you have a double decker, the bottom one's going to have to be strong enough to hold the second story. And just like the bottom one, just like a 20 amah sukkah would have to be very sturdy to hold up a high roof. So the Rabbi Yehuda in both cases says that's fine. It's made, even though it's made as keva, and Tanakama says in both cases no good. So these the logic may be related to each other.
Could it also be an issue if the second one goes over 20?
Right. It could, if the second one goes over 20, then for sure that would be a direct consequence of this case. And the Gemara will talk about that case. Regarding that tree, the one that's under a tree, if the tree has more shade than sun, That's what the Mishnah was talking about, that it's no good, because the tree is providing a majority of the shade. So everything under it is no good. Pasul. But Rava gives a very important leniency. If the tree is just sparse, just a few branches, and it's giving, the tree has, tree alone would give more sun than shade, then you can sit under that sukkah and it's fine. Okay, that would be very useful. Now, mimai medikatane ki'ilu asaa betoch habayit. How does Rava know that? Well, he can derive it from the Mishnah itself, because it says if you're under a tree, it's like you're under a house. Lama limitne ki'ilu asaa betoch habayit. That's strange language. Why does the Mishnah compare under a tree to under a house? Letne pisula. I should just say, it's under a tree, pisula, it's no good. Ela hakamash malan. Ilan dumya de bayit. Ma bayit silato meruba mechamato. Af ilan silato meruba mechamato. Rather, the Mishnah must want to give us an analogy that under a tree is like under a house. Just like under a house, most people's houses, they have full roofs that give all shade. So too, when we say under a tree, it means a tree that gives mostly shade, more shade than sun. But otherwise, it's not like it's under a house. If it gives more sun than shade, then you can put your sukkah under a tree, and that's okay. All right, so now we understand where we got it from, but the Gemara is still not happy with his logic. Even if the tree is giving just a little bit of shade, it's more sun. Nevertheless, whatever is under that tree, whatever schach is under that tree is going to become pasul, because it's not open to the sky. So imagine, let's say you had a sukkah that had 51% shade, and then you have a few leaves over it, even just a few leaves. Anything that's under those leaves is schach pasul. So if you take that away, then you're going to have only 49% of shade. Of schach kasher. So it should still be no good, right? Even if it's just a little bit. That's the question. Amar Papa b'shechabatan. Papa says we're talking about a case where you take the schach, that the leaves, and you actually, it's not up high, but rather you mix it in. L'chabatan, like chabit means to whack it down. We lower it and we mix it into the schach. So the schach has kosher schach interweaved, mixed in with leaves that are connected to the tree. How is that better? When it's intermixed, then we could use the law of bitul, that we go by the majority. The majority is schach kasher. We'll consider everything here to be schach kasher, and even if there's a few percent that's not, 51%, we'll consider it as if it all is, and therefore 51% shade, that's fine. But if it's not connected at all and high above, then we can't mix it up. So this is that's Rashi's explanation anyway. Others say chavatan means you bear it, you strip it, so there's no more leaves on it or something like that. Okay, but we'll continue with Rashi's explanation. So, hold on, if you did that and you lowered it down and mixed it together, then what's even the chidush? I mean, then of course it would be good. So you have a little bit of schach pasul. So why would you think that would be a problem? No, we still wanted to teach this law because we might have thought we should make a gezerah. A gezerah, if you mix it up, we might say it's prohibited because in the next year you might forget that you lowered it and mixed it up and just leave it up on top, and you'll say, oh, it's okay, there's only a little bit, only a few leaves. You might think it's that's permitted. So therefore we might have thought that you're making gezerah. So Rava comes to teach, no, don't make a gezerah. And if you do mix it in, it's fine. If it's high on top, then it's going to take away from that which is below, and you may end up with less than a majority of shade. Okay, but even this point that we don't make a gezerah, also we have another source. Haname tanena hidla ale et gefen v'etadelat v'takisom v'sikech al gaban pesula. This is a very similar case. This is the next Mishnah. If you take a grapevine or gourd or ivy, so these are climbing plants, so that you can take it from wherever it's growing and move it around. My next door neighbor's neighbor once had a gourd plant that got so long he ran it through all of our backyards, and so you could run this and put it and use it as schach. If you do that, pisula, because it's connected to the ground. But if you have more schach than this pasul grapevines, or if you cut them and then they're no longer connected to the ground, then that's permitted. So that's the source. Now, what kind of cases are talking about? If you're talking about a case where you hung them, but they're not connected, they're not interweaved with the regular schach, then you have non-kosher schach and kosher schach, and wherever there's non-kosher schach, it's going to nullify the kosher schach at that point, and then you're going to have less shade than sun. This source, this Tannaitic source, must be talking about a case where you did connect them and interweave them. And so therefore you would just say bitul, whatever is connected to the ground is batel, as long as it's less. And we can learn from here that I would not make a gezerah from a case where I do interweave them to a case where I don't interweave them. So therefore, since I have this source, I don't need Rava to teach me about the other source. And we end up saying, no, I do need this source also, because I would have thought maybe that when you interweave them, I'm only allowed to do that b'di'avad. If it happened already and you sat in it already, okay, but you can't lechatechila make a sukkah like that. So now we come to teach us that you can even make a sukkah like that. Okay, this is very, very interesting. In general, the laws of bitul regarding food, you cannot do lechatechila, right? If a drop of milk fell into the pot of meat and it's only a little bit, so then you say batel. But you can't do it on purpose and say I'm just going to put a little bit in here because it gives it, it's I like to, and then say it's okay. So general bitul is only b'di'avad, but in this case it's okay, which is actually really important because probably any sukkah, if you have a metal pole going through a wire, there's always things that are technically pasul, and you put them there anyway because just a little bit, so it doesn't matter. And so this is important halakha that we learn, that you can have a little bit of non-kosher schach and still count it becomes batel with the kosher schach. Okay, excellent. Now we talked about the tree, and now we're going to talk about the double-decker sukkah. And here's an actual picture of one. I don't know who built this to take a picture of it. I don't know how they got this picture. But anyway, this looks a little rickety. I don't know if you would want to go up this ladder, and if you'd want to stand on these bamboo shoots. So, but that's precisely a topic that's going to come up in the Gemara about how flimsy or sturdy is the roof of the first floor. So we begin Sukkah al gabe Sukkah. Teno Rabbanan, Basukot teshevu, velo besukah shetachat hasukah, velo besukah shetachat ha'ilan, velo besukah shebetoch habayit. This baraita is very important. It's giving the source for the cases of the Mishnah. You have to sit in a sukkah, in a hut, and not a sukkah that's under a sukkah or under a tree or under a house. Just sit in a sukkah. Very simple. This seems to be the original source and reason. And it's not independent of having schach kasher. You just have to be in a structure. That's a sukkah and nothing else. But the Gemara is going to analyze it in terms of the roof itself, that if you have an extra roof, then it somehow nullifies the first roof, as we'll see. So now we say, Adarabba, hold on. Where are they learning it from? From the pasuk that says, Basukot teshvu, in plural sukkots, sukkahs, you should sit. Tarte mashma. Actually, that sounds like two. So you should be hidur mitzvah. You're really fulfilling the pasuk. Basukot, I'm sitting in this one, which is under this one. I'm sitting in two sukkahs. Maybe you have to sit in two sukkahs. Amarav Nachman bar Yitzchak, basukat ketiv. it's written without a vav, and without a vav, with a vav for sure it's plural. Without a vav implies more towards singular, so we're going with the ketib. Okay, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. All right, Rabbi Yirmiyah is known for his theoretical cases. He likes to present. So here he gives us a puzzle. Pe'amim shetehem kesherot. I can conceive of a case where I have a sukkah on top of a sukkah, and both of them are kasher. It seems to go against the Mishnah. I'm sure he was a great teacher, right? He presented this, and all the students would have to figure out what is he talking about. Sometimes you can have a case like this, and both of them are no good. And sometimes one or the other is kasher, and the other is pasul, and then sometimes the other way around. So all four possibilities. Let's see each one. כגון שתחתונה חמתה מרובה מסילתה, ועליונה סילתה מרובה מחמתה, וקיימה עליונה בתוך 20. So both of them could be kosher. For example, if the bottom one had more sun than shade, so the bottom one by itself wouldn't be good, but the top one has more shade than sun, and the whole thing is under 20. So in that case, the bottom one actually is really nothing. It's just a few branches that happen to be there. So in that case, it's really just one sukkah that happens to have two stories. Here's a picture of it, right? So this one is almost nothing. So it just happens to have two stories, and you can, enough to something to sit on, but basically it's one sukkah. So he's cheating a little. It's not really two sukkahs. Right? You can sit in either of them because you're just sitting low or you're sitting high. It's like putting a big stage in your sukkah, and then you're sitting higher than it. But if it's made out of flimsy things, so you could sit under it too, because it's just a couple of poles. So that's a good case. Now, פעמים ששתיהן פסולות, איך ידמה? כגון דתרוויו סילתן מרובה מסילתן, וקיים העליונה למעלה מ20 אמה. If you have, both of them are no good if you have the bottom one is made out of, both of them have full schach, and the top one is more than 20. So the top one more than 20, that's no good because it's more than 20. And the bottom one is under a sukkah. So that's no good either. So there you go. There you have two sukkahs, but neither of them are kosher.
Why isn't this like the platform sukkah?
Why? What? Sitting on top of it?
No, we had the case before where you created a platform inside the sukkah so that it becomes less than 20 amot.
Oh, if you're sitting on top, okay, let's assume there's more than 20 amot even between the roof and the top one, right? Depending on where you're sitting, right? Okay, good point. Let's see, did they? Yeah, they did see in the picture here. They said there's more than 20 amot from the roof of the first to the roof of the second. Otherwise, you're right, then there could be a platform. Now, the bottom one is fine and the top one is no good. How could you have that? So the bottom one is good schach. And the top one has sun more than shade, and both of them are within 20. So let's see a picture of that. Yeah, so here the bottom one is fine because you have, see the bottom one, silata meruba, is good schach, good kosher sechach, and the top one just has a few branches, and they're not connected, they're just like they're nothing. So therefore, really, it's like you have one full sukkah on the bottom, and on the top you have just some disconnected branches. Technically, even if it was a tree, right, and just a few branches, it might be good. So for sure, if it's not disconnected, it's not going to undo anything because it's really not a sukkah on top of a sukkah. The top one is not a kosher sukkah. So you see, again, he's like bending the definitions a little. And lastly, upe'amim shel yonah keshera v'tachtona pesula. So how can you have a case where the top one is kosher and the bottom one is not? Both of them have shade more than sun, and the top one is within 20. And so this goes to 10. And so here is a case where tachtona is, this is the same. Yeah. So this is the case here where silata meruba and silata, both of them have silata meruba. And so the top one is totally fine because the top one is beautiful, nice sukkah. The bottom one is the classic case of a sukkah, tachat sukkah. So this is actually the main case that the Mishnah is talking about in the first place. So that's a simple one. Okay, good. So there you go. Rav Yirmiyah succeeded in giving examples of all four. Okay, now he's expecting that he's going to get a chazaka baruch for his brilliance, but instead the Gemara says peshita, right? You didn't teach us anything new. Isn't this all obvious, right? You're just applying. You bent some definitions and applied obvious rules to interesting cases, but you didn't teach us any new halacha. So then we say hatachtona keshera ve'elyona pesula is terichale. For the third case, where it's the bottom one that's kasher and the top one that's pasul, right? That was this case when the bottom one is kasher and the top one is pasul, right? Because we say that just having a few branches on the top one doesn't affect the bottom one. You just basically have one sukkah on the bottom and a few random branches on top. And that case is in fact a chidush. And I might have thought, like I did back with the tree, that those branches on top, because they're not schach, they're just too few to be schach, maybe they would make the things under it pasul sechach and undo that. So therefore, kamashman comes to teach us it's not connected to a tree, and so it doesn't matter. It's totally fine.
Does this disagree with the previous sugya? Because it seems that in the previous sugya we had to actually have the schach pasul mixed in.
Mixed in, but here it's not schach pasul. It's not connected. It's actually schach kasher. It's actually strange that the Gemara even thinks it would be schach pasul. I saw one commentary say that maybe it's talking about with that higher sukkah is more than 20 amot, and that's why it's schach pasul, right? But really, it's actually schach kasher. It just happens to be higher. Maybe you think if it's higher up, then it's not connected. Then it's as part of another sukkah, and so somehow it's bad because of that. Okay, so anyway, it's totally fine, but that's his small contribution in that case. Now, that does relate to the next halacha though. Kama yehe ben sukkah lesukkah ute tachtona pesula. How high does the second sukkah have to be that it would be called a sukkah such that the bottom one would be pasul, right? Because if there's no space between them, you could have very thick sukkah, a very thick schach, right? You could have a schach that's 10 feet thick. I mean, as long as you have to, to have rain has to come through, but that's okay. So, what's the minimum amount that you would have? I mean, I think the simple answer is a full height of a full sukkah, 10 amot, right? But we'll see. There's going to be three different answers. Amar Rav Huna tefach sheken masinu ba'ahole tum'ah tefach, right? Just one hand breadth is enough. And how do we know that? Because regarding tum'ah, the hand breadth is a small amount that is significant. So within halacha, we find an example of a tefach being a significant divider, a separator. Once there's a tefach there, it's no longer the same level of schach. It's now another layer. And so you can't put your sukkah under another layer of schach. Good. Where do we see that tum'ah, that tefach in tum'ah is significant? The Tanya, tefach al tefach berum tefach mevi et hatum'ah vechoses bifnei hatum'ah. Aval pachot merum tefach lo mevi velo choses. We talked about this recently, right? If you have a dead body and you have a tefach of space and then the top of the coffin, say. So then the tum'ah does not go above that at all. Whereas if you have less than the tefach of space, then it will go above. It's actually cubed, what you see here. Tefach sounds more like basically the volume of a Rubik's Cube, right? So if you have, let's say the volume of a Rubik's Cube, this is the smallest, and you have a bone in there, and then something else also within that space covered, then tumah will transfer from one to the other. That's what it means that meviet hatumah, it transfers tumah, and also it's chotzetz, that meaning that tumah, once there's some board on top of it, the tumah will not go above. So as long as there's space of a tefach, it will not go above that. But anything less than that, it will not transfer as a tent, and it will it will go above, right? That it won't be a barrier on top. So I don't think they're saying there's any conceptual similarity between the space of a sukkah and tumah, or maybe ohel. Actually, maybe, right? This is tumat ohel. So ohel is considered a tefach. So maybe because of that. So we see the tefach is significant enough, and therefore, if you have a sukkah on the bottom, a tefach of space, and more sukkah on top of that, that is called a sukkah, tachat sukkah, and the bottom will be no good. Less than a tefach, we'll consider it all together, one big layer of schach. That's opinion number one. Opinion number two, Rav Chisda, ורבה בר רב הונא אמרה, ארבעה טפחים, שלא משים למקום חשוב פחות מארבעה, 4 tefachim. We never see anything that's a significant area that's less than 4 tefachim. For example, for Hilchot Shabbat, if you want to have a Reshut HaYachid, it has to be horizontally 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim pole. That is a Reshut HaYachid. Anything less than that is considered like nothing. And so therefore, interesting here, we're turning it vertically. Even though for Shabbat, it would have to be also 10 amot high, right, to be a Reshut HaYachid. Okay, so we're turning it. So therefore, if you had a sukkah with schach, and then 4 tefachim of space, and then more schach, that's called sukkah tachat sukkah, or sukkah al gabe sukkah. But anything less than 4 tefachim, that's all one layer. So this one's a little bit more mekel. Ushmuel Amar Asara. He says 10 tefachim. That's what I would have thought. My Tama de Shmuel. Bekehchera kach pesula. Mahchera basara af pesula basara. It's the same. How do you make a sukkah kosher with 10 tefachim? So too, to ruin the lower sukkah, you need 10 tefachim above it, and then schach in order to lower the other one, right? That's sukkah al gabe sukkah. You need a sukkah that's on top. What is a sukkah? It has to be a kosher sukkah on top of the lower one, not just schach. So that makes sense. Okay, that's Shmuel. Now we're going to present a challenge to Shmuel. Tenan. Rabbi Yehuda Omed, im en dayorin be'alyona, hatachtona keshera. Rabbi Yehuda says if there's nobody living in the upper one, then the bottom one is fine. That was Rabbi Yehuda who disagreed with the Tanakama in our Mishnah. Now, my end dayorin. What do you mean that there's nobody living there? Ilema dayorin mamash atu dayorin kagarmeh. Does it really matter if somebody happens to be there? Or what if they go out for a jog and then they come back? Like it shouldn't matter if there's technically anybody actually living there. Ela da my end dayorin kol shena reuya ledira. It means it's not habitable. Not habitable. That sounds like it's less than 10 tefachim. Then it's not habitable. So that's why the Yehuda says, if there's nobody living there, then the bottom one is fine. Sounds like if it's less than 10. If that in fact is the case that Rabbi Yehuda is talking about, then Mechelal the Tanakama Savara Pesula. That Tanakama means even if it's less than 10, it's still pasul, right? Rabbi Yehuda said if it's less than 10, it's not habitable, so then it's okay. But Tanakama disagreed on that very case, and so that would, according to that, less than 10 would be, even less than 10 would be pasul, and that's a challenge to Shemuel that says less than 10 is not even considered anything, right? Is all one layer of sukkah. It's not a separate sukkah. So that is a solid question against Shemuel. However, we can save Shemuel with another interpretation of the Mishnah that comes from Eretz Yisrael. Ki ata Rav Dimi amar amri b'ma'arava. Im en hatachtona yechola lekabel karim uchsatot shel elyona hatachtona keshera. He said, what does it mean that it's not habitable? It means if the roof of the first one is not sturdy enough to support the cushions and blankets of the top one, then the lower one is kasher, right? In other words, that roofing, you can't consider it a dira if it can't even hold anything. It's not sturdy enough. And according to that, Shemuel would be fine. It could be 10 high, but the question is only, is it sturdy enough? And so that's the case that Rabbi Yehuda said, if it's not sturdy, then it's okay, because it's not really a sukkah and gabe sukkah. It's not sturdy enough to be a second floor. Now, Mikilad Tanakama Sabat Afa Pisha Lekabel Pesula. So Rabbi Yehuda said that was okay. So can we infer, since that's the case that they were arguing about, that according to Tanakama, even if it's not sturdy enough to hold pillows and blankets, it's still pisula. Why would you even call that sukkah al gabe sukkah if you can't go up there? So it must be actually they're arguing on a case where it could hold it, but you'll be afraid every second that it might fall down. It's not sturdy. But so if it's totally flimsy, then everyone would agree that it's not a second layer, and therefore the bottom would be okay. If it's very sturdy, then everybody would agree it's not okay. And the machloket is when it's a kind of a little bit sturdy, just in between. All right, let's go on a little bit to the next Mishnah. If you take a perfectly good sukkah, but then you put a sheet on top of it because there's still too much sun, right? Since it's 51% sun, shade, but still it could be too much, so you put an extra layer, or you put a sheet under the schach because you made it out of leaves, and the leaves are falling into your soup, and so you put another one to catch it. Or you get a canopy bed like this. And so this is like putting a sheet underneath the sechach, and all these are non-kosher sechach. All these pisula. But what you are allowed to do is make a bed like this. Naklitem, it has only 2 posts. And so since you have 2 posts and it has no roof, right? So this basically just walls. So that is not considered a separate entity, and you can use that, which is cool. You can make like a tent, right, in your sukkah, and then you can be there while it's raining. It's not flat. There's no roof to be a separation. Okay.
What do you mean? This is a sukkah within a sukkah, but if you make it slanted, it's not considered a sukkah in the sukkah.
Correct. No. This is not. This is worse than a sukkah. This is pasul. This is not even a sukkah. This is like a house inside a sukkah.
But who cares? It's my bed. I don't.
Yeah, I know it's your bed. You can have sheets on. That's okay. You can put the sheets over your head because
so
that is not a permanent structure.
So right? You're possailing the whole sukkah because you put a thing over your bed? No,
not the whole sukkah. You can sit over here. That's fine. You can't sleep in the bed.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You can't sleep under a sheet. Under a sheet that's attached to 4 poles. You can sleep in a sheet under a sheet that's attached to 2 poles, or just in your sleeping bag. That's fine. Okay. I was kidding about the tent while it's raining. You'd be no need to be in the sukkah, even though you can stay dry. Chasid shote. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Now the Gemara says, Marav Chista, Lo Shanu Ela Mipeneha Neshara Valenaota Keshera. Very interesting. The only case in which it's no good is when you put the sheet there for shade or to catch leaves. But if you're putting a sheet there for decoration, then that's fine. Amazing. You can put a whole sheet, nice, beautifully colored decorated sheet under, and it's totally fine because it's like part of the structure. You want it to be there. Pishita. So pishita. Not only do we say that we agree, isn't that obvious? The Mishnah said it's no good if it's there to catch leaves. So if it's any other reason, then obviously isn't it good? No, not necessarily. I might have thought that the Mishnah is just giving you an example, a common example. Why would you put a sheet under the schach? Usually to catch leaves. But it's just giving an example. And the truth is that no matter what, it would be pasul. Any sheet under pasul. I might have thought that. That's why Rav Chista has to come and tell us, no, specifically if you have a reason is to catch it, then it's no good. Because now it's offering more support, more roofing, all right, more shade or more protection. But if it's for decoration, that's fine. Okay, then we're going to try to support him, Rav Chista. למה מסייע לסיככה כהלכתה ועיטרה בקרמין בסדינין המסוירים ותלה בה אגוזין שקדים אפרכסין ורימונים פרקילי ענבים ועטרות של שיבולין ינות שמנין וסלטות אסור להסתפק מהן. Maybe we could bring this braita as a proof that if you put on if you use sechach, you put colorful curtains or sheets, Or you put on it nuts, peaches, almonds, pomegranates, grape branches, stalks of grain, wine, oil. In a jar, you hang jars of wine from the sukkah. Beautiful. My mother used to hang baskets of fruits from the sechach. This kind of looks like the Samaritans, right? Obviously, not too many, not too many that you wouldn't have any branches and stuff, right? But if you put all this, I mean, obviously, it's all nice because this is a harvest holiday, so it's beautiful to put all these things there. So if you do that, you can't use them, right? Once you designate it as an ornament, then you cannot go and eat them on the holiday until all the way after Shemini Aseret. But if you made a condition, you say, listen, I'm putting these grapes up here for decoration, but I want to eat them in 2 days, right? So you make a tonight, then I'm going to eat them, then that's okay, because that means you didn't completely separate from them. You see, this would make sense according to the mukseh reason, right? That it's mukseh, but no, have in mind that it's not mukseh. Even on Yom Tov, right? I'm not putting it there for decoration. I'm having in mind. I'm gonna use them. I'm not separating from them. Or hekdesh reason also. I'm not making them hekdesh. I happen to be holding them here, right? So then it's all okay. So this seems to be a good proof because in the examples here we had colored sheets, right? And it says you can't use the colored sheets. You can't take it down on the holiday, but it's good. It's kosher. It's a kosher sukkah. So then we say, no, dilma min hasad. No, maybe it's talking about a case where it's hanging on the wall. And that's what the Mishnah is talking about. When you put these on the wall, if you have put a sheet there, you can't take it down on Sukkot and use it. But it's not talking about on the roof. So really, we don't know where you put the sheet. So it's not a disproof, but it's not a proof either for Rav Chisda. I feel like doing just another paragraph. Itemar noye sukkah en ma'atin bes basukkah. Decorations of a sukkah do not take away from the volume, from the area of a sukkah. Even if the decorations are hanging down. Amar Rav Ashi umin asad b'ma'atin. Rav Ashi says, I agree that they don't take away from the height. In other words, if you have a pretty short sukkah and you have some decorations, that's okay. Last time we said that if there's thorns sticking down, that's not good, right? Because it's not nice. But decorations make it nicer, so that's okay. But Rav Ashi says from the side they do. If you have a minimum size sukkah, 7x7, and then you have posters and stuff on the wall sticking out, and now you can't fit, then that is in fact a problem. And all right, we'll end here. Baruch Adonai L'olam. Amen ve'amen.